So in Matthew chapter 13, where I asked you to turn, we're starting in verse 1, but I'm not going to read the whole first section of this. It's the parable of the sower, or the parable of the soil, however your version might have it. And the way this starts off is Jesus tells this parable. And in the parable he tells is about a farmer who takes seed and he sows the seed. And he goes on to explain the seed falling on different pieces of soil, if you will. Some of it falls on the path, some of it falls in rocks, some of it falls in thorns, and some of it falls on the good, rich soil. And then he goes on to explain what the parable means. And that's really where today I want to pick up our message. So we're in verse 18 to start with. So Matthew chapter 13, verse 18 is where we want to start reading today. And this is Jesus explaining to the disciples and those around him the meaning of the parable he just told, which I think is awesome. I think it's great that he just makes it so clear for them and for us, the understanding of this. And so in Matthew chapter 13, verse 18, my NLT version says this. It says, "Now listen to the explanation of the parable about the farmer planting seeds. The seed that fell on the footpath represents those who hear the message about the kingdom and don't understand it. Then the evil one comes and snatches away the seed that was planted in their hearts. The seed on the rocky soil represents those who hear the message, immediately receive it with joy, but since they don't have deep roots, they don't last long. They fall away as soon as they have problems or are persecuted for believing God's word. The seed that fell among the thorns represents those who hear God's word. But all too quickly, the message is crowded out by the worries of this life and the lure of wealth, so no fruit is produced. The seed that fell on good soil represents those who truly hear and understand God's word and produce a harvest of 30, 60, or even 100 times as much as had been planted." And so I'm going to stop right there, but I want to explain a little bit about the message today. Today's message really has two parts to it. Both parts are going to happen today, but the first part of the message is looking at the four places the seeds land. The second part is going to be talking about what might keep us from hearing God today. The calluses that maybe have formed. The four parts of soil, or the four different kinds of soil, I think represent many of us in this room today. An interesting thing about all of this that I think the Bible makes pretty clear, and it doesn't say this, but it jumped out at me this time reading through this, is that as the farmer sows his seed, the seeds are sown on all kinds of soil. Just because maybe our lives are busy, that doesn't mean the seeds haven't been sown. Just because maybe we are born with less than everybody else, doesn't mean the seeds haven't been sown. Just because maybe our soil is shallow, doesn't mean the seeds haven't been sown. And I think that that's an important thing, because we love excuses in the culture we live today, don't we? I mean, we love to make excuses for all kinds of things. And I think for some of us, we would even make an excuse to say, the seed hasn't been sown in my life because of this. And we can't say that. You see what's interesting, and in case you haven't figured this out yet, what we have here are the four different places that the soil lands. We have a walking path, we have the rocks, we have thorns, and then we have good soil. And what this parable says, what Jesus is saying, is that the seed is sown on all of it. The farmer, or in this case, God, he doesn't count somebody out because of who they are, where they're from, where they live, what they have or don't have, how smart they are or not. He doesn't do that. The seeds are sown on all areas. What I would want to do today, if I could, is take a minute and say, which one of these are you? And now here's what I believe, is that almost every one of us instantly said, well, I'm the rich soil. My roots run deep. Got it all together. That's what most of us would say. But I want to challenge you to do something, maybe for the first time. Be honest with yourself. Don't think of the person sitting next to you. Ladies, don't think of your husbands right now. None of this. Gentlemen, don't think of fishing right now. Come on back, and just for a little bit of time, let's focus on ourselves, and let's today really try and listen. God, what do you have for me today? Not about anybody else, but what do you have for me today? Where do I fit on this? Because here's the thing. Everybody here, I want you to know this. You can no longer say the seeds haven't been sown for you. They're being sown. The seeds that are sown is the gospel. It's the message of Jesus, who God is, the power that he is in our lives. And the seeds are being sown. You can't say they're not. The question is what kind of soil are the seeds landing on? You see, when I hear him talk about the walking path, for those that don't understand it, to me it's for those who choose not to understand it. For those who can come to church over and over and over again and put zero effort into understanding what God has for them. Because we know the gospel's for everybody. I'm an extremely simple-minded person. I'm not super intelligent. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of time for me to understand, for me to dig in. But I choose to do it. Have you been, maybe, in church for your whole life? And you come to church simply because it's your duty. Because your mom and dad told you you have to go to church or God's going to get mad at you. And so you come because it's your duty, yet you haven't once grown in your faith. Then my challenge would be, or observation is then maybe you're this path right here. You're the walking path that the seeds are landing on, making no effort to understand, to believe, to embrace the message, the seeds that are sown. Maybe you're the rocky path. And if I can be honest with you, I believe these next two are what make up the majority of the Western church today. The rocky path. And what Jesus says is this is those who, they accept the message with joy. They get excited about the message. And we live in a conference-filled, seminar-filled, self-help book-filled culture. Not that any of that stuff is bad. But I've been to Promise Keepers, I've been to Acquire the Fire, I've been to youth conference after youth conference, youth camps, all kinds of things. And where I see people rushing to accept the message of Jesus Christ. They hear this very polished sermon, this music that is just out of this world, and get caught up in the emotion of it. And then all of a sudden you see hundreds, if not thousands of people rushing forward with great joy to accept this message. But then what happens is the roots don't go deep, and as soon as the difficulty hits, now it's like, well, wait a minute here. That guy said my life was going to be better if I followed Jesus. That guy said my marriage was going to get fixed if I followed Jesus. That guy said my relationship with my kids was going to be better if I followed Jesus. Now there's difficulty in my life. Now I'm bumping up against struggles. Heck with this deal. And then quickly we walk away because life is hard. It's difficult. Many of us have been sold this idea that God is a drive-up ATM machine. He's there for what I want, when I want it, and I can make as many withdrawals as I need to. But as soon as we don't get what we want, then we walk away. Maybe you're here today, and the Lord right now is saying, hey, that's you. It's just shallow. Your roots are shallow. Maybe you know that when life has gotten difficult, you've walked away because he didn't give you what you wanted. I think our churches are filled with that mindset today. The third area that Jesus talks about, and again, this is another one that I really think that has filled our churches, is the thorns. The thorns represent the craziness of our lives, the busyness. And we wear our level of busyness like a badge of honor. Don't we? Like how many times, I know I've said this before, but how many times do you begin a conversation? Hey, how's it going? You start this conversation. Hey, how's it going? Oh, man, I'm so busy. And that becomes now the focal point of the relationship. And I know it's nobody in this room, but other people in other churches, let's say, try and one-up one another. It's like, yeah, I'm so busy. I mean, my kids are in 18 sports, and, you know, my wife's on 3 different boards, and I'm the CEO of the whole country, and, I mean, it's like, you know, you start your list. But then you're talking to Scott, and Scott's like, oh, man, that's nothing. My wife's Gloria. And it's just like, you're right. But that's what we do. Because we wear our busyness as a badge of honor, as though you need to be off the charts, ridiculously busy, or you're not doing anything. And what happens then? Where does God fit in that crazy life? He doesn't. So what happens then to this relationship and the roots that we're trying to put down? It gets choked out. We race into church. We race out of church because we just try and squeeze it in our schedule. We don't build relationships with other people in our church because we just don't have time. Yet one of the biggest complaints and why people leave church, I think most, is because nobody even reached out to me. And we get choked out. So maybe this is you today. Maybe right now the Lord is saying, you know what, you got way too much going on, and the thing that's suffering most is our relationship. Or maybe you really are here and you're just like, you know what, Pastor Bill, man, I really do feel, I feel good. I got deep roots. I'm really tight with the Lord. It's like the seeds that He's sown, it's falling on good soil, and it's great, man. It's really great. That's wonderful. But here's the question I would ask you is if you look at the rest of what Jesus says, is when the seed falls on good soil, what happens is then it grows up and it produces a fruit that's 30, 60, or 100 times more than what was sown. And so then here would be my question today, because I love to challenge us as a church, is are you producing that fruit? Because when I read this, the picture that I see is of this seed that's being sown in a person. The seed that's sown. And then out of that seed comes a harvest. I see Mike Veerling. The seeds that are sown have been and continue to be. And in my mind, what I picture is a guy like this standing out in the middle of a field. And I don't know about you guys, but I love a field that is all plowed over. I mean, like, I don't know what it is, but like this time of year, the fields are being plowed, they're ready to be planted, or they are planted, and it's beautiful because it's all uniform. Is anybody else? You guys are looking at me like, man, it's dirt. So what? It's dirt that looks the same. So? But it's cool looking. And I look out and I see in these fields, this big empty field, and I imagine a guy like Mike. He's standing out there in the middle of this field, and the seeds that have been sown It doesn't just produce one stalk of corn, but instead, simply by the seeds that are sown in one guy, in one lady, in one person, the whole field now is filled because it's 30, 60, or 100 times what was sown in him. We produce fruit. We take what's been given to us, and out of that seed that's sown in the good soil, stuff happens. Others are reached. And it doesn't mean standing in front of the church and preaching. It means a guy who treats his family right. It means a guy who does business right. He's honest. He's honorable. He has integrity. And in the community, people know it. Interestingly enough, before I went turkey hunting, my peep sight popped off of my bow like the day before. And so I went up to the archery range in North Branch. And so I was talking to the kid up there and explaining my whole turkey hunt. I said, I'm going with this guy from church, and I said, his name's Mike Veerling. He owns Precision Taxidermy. Oh yeah, I know Mike. He's a great guy. And he just starts going on and on about Mike. And I'm not just saying that just because I want him to take me hunting more. Maybe a little bit, but not all of it. But here's why I'm saying it, because I want you to understand that that's the harvest. Do you see that? That's the harvest. It's being somebody that has integrity. It's how we live our lives. It's how we do business. It's how we pay our bills. It's how we treat people. That is producing the harvest from what has been sown inside of us. And church, I want to challenge you with this. If you'd say, man, I understand it, I love him, are you producing the harvest? Are you telling people about him? Are you treating people right? Do you have that integrity and that honor that goes with it so that the fruit can come from it? So, here's where this all gets, in my opinion, interesting. Because we all, I think, fit in one of those four categories. The question is, what will you do with whatever it is that the Lord is stirring in you right now? Because the seeds have been sown. And I want you guys to feel something today. Not emotionally feel. I want you to do that too because of what the Lord is stirring in you. I want you to physically feel something today. We have all had, at one time or another throughout our lives, seeds sown in us. And maybe even today, you feel seeds are being sown. But I want you, and this is where it's weird, I know. I want you to feel the seeds today. And so I'm going to throw them at you. You don't think I'm going to, but I'm really going to. So here's what I want you to do. Yep, there you go. I would encourage you to not have your mouths open. And I'm not going to throw them hard. And I know it's silly and it's a little dorky, but I cannot tell you the power that I think is in this little thing, because this seed, I want you to understand this now. The seeds that Jesus is talking about are his words. The gospel that is sown inside of us. And sometimes it's so easy for us to detach from that. And I want you to feel the seeds hit you today. The seeds of the gospel. And so what I'm going to do is I'm throwing seeds on you. She's looking at me like, what? I would encourage you to do something. Number one, you're going to need to trust me a little bit. But just close your eyes. Not for just safety's sake. For the sake of, this isn't just sunflower seeds that I'm throwing at you. You guys, Jesus plants, he sows the seeds of the gospel in each of us. And I want you to feel that. Are you ready? Close your eyes. I think that is just, I think it's so powerful. Now here's the thing. This is where the second part comes in, you guys. And this is the part that I think, I pray often that we would leave different than we were when we got to church. That's always my prayer, is that we wouldn't just show up for church, visit with a few people, sing a couple songs, sit still, or try and sit still. Some of you aren't very good at it. For a half hour, and then leave and check it off our list of to-dos. You guys, my heart's desire is that through what we do here, every single one of us would leave different than we were when we got here. And I believe right now, this point in our service, now this is where we need to take another step towards the Lord. Because if you go back to verse 14 of Matthew chapter 13, Jesus makes some powerful statements here. He says, this fulfills the prophecy of Isaiah that says, when you hear what I say, you will not understand. When you see what I do, you will not comprehend. Now listen to this, verse 15. For the hearts of these people are hardened. Some of you with an NIV, I love that version even more because it says, for this people's hearts has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears. Means they hear a little bit. And they have closed their eyes, means they've chosen to close their eyes. Otherwise, they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. But their hearts are calloused. Now, here's what I know to be true, is in this place, bringing all this 2,000 years closer, in this place, you guys, some of you, you have every reason in the world to have a calloused heart towards the church. I know it. The way you were brought up, the things that people said, the oppressive nature with which God has been taught to you. I get it. You have every reason to have a callous over your heart. But in my experience and understanding, the church doesn't always represent Jesus' heart the best. What he says is, when you choose to hear, when you choose to see, he's with us. He heals us. He touches us. It's up to us with what we're going to do with the callus. A callus, just so we're all on the same page, a callus forms by the constant rubbing or injuring of an area. For me, an example, I have calluses on the tips of my fingers from playing guitar. Some of you have calluses on your hands from raking or shoveling or handling tools, sewing. We get calluses from the repetitive hurting or over and over rubbing or beating on. And here's the danger, and this is exactly what I'm going to ask you to do today. When I get a callus on my finger and it gets a little tag on it, I start picking at it, and then I peel that callus away. But now here's the thing. The next time I play guitar, guess what? It hurts. Because it's just like raw skin underneath that callus. And what I would present today is the exact same thing happens with our hearts. When we get a callus on our heart from whatever it is, and we make a decision, because don't ever forget the fact that the choice is ours to make. When we choose to peel away a layer of that callus, what we're doing is we're opening ourselves up with something that might hurt again. And I know that. But it's exactly what I want to ask you to do today. If you have a heart that is calloused, what I want to do is I want to ask you to peel it away. If you have identified in your life, I need a volunteer, by the way. Jason's pointing at his wife. That's going to go well this afternoon. I was very tempted to bring a gas tiller in here and start it up. Here's what I want to ask you guys to do today. Worship team, why don't you guys come back up here? What I want to ask you to do today, try not to get too distracted as these guys go up there. What I want to ask you to do today is if you know you have a calloused heart for whatever reason, maybe it's from being hurt, maybe it's because you don't trust people, maybe it's your pride, whatever it is that has created that callus, would you please tear a layer of it off today? Would you please be open to whatever it is that God has stirred in you today? If He has revealed to you that your life is essentially the rocky path where it's just surface, you have no real roots, and when difficulty comes, there's not much to hold on to, then would you peel away a layer today and let God speak to you? If He's revealed to you that yours is the crazy busy life and you're the one that hangs your busyness on your chest like a badge of honor because of all the thorns, because of all the stuff that's choking out your relationship with Him, then would you be willing to do some pruning today? Would you be willing to let stuff fall for the sake of your relationship with Jesus so that you can produce fruit? You see, church, this is what makes it different than just showing up on Sunday morning, is what we choose to do with it. Are we going to choose to leave different than we were when we got here?